Long before the spotlight found them, before their names lit up marquees, some of Hollywood's most iconic figures stood in the shadow of war. They weren't just actors, they were stars adored by millions. Men and women with glittering careers, fan followings, and fame. And yet, when their nation called, they didn't hide behind their celebrity. They donned a uniform, trained like every other soldier, and stepped into war zones, not for applause, but for their country. Some were already legends. Others became legends because of what they did in battle. Together, they earned some of the highest honors in military history. These are their stories. These are Hollywood stars who went to war. Before fame found him in the role of Sherlock Holmes, Rathbone fought in some of the most brutal trench battles of World War I with the London Scottish Regiment. He was known for volunteering on risky reconnaissance missions and received the Military Cross for conspicuous bravery. His combat experience gave a haunted depth to many of his performances, especially in war and mystery films. Many of us remember the corrupt French police prefect, played by Rains, from the iconic 1942 film Casablanca. But 26 years before, in 1916, he was fighting in the trenches at Vimy in France. He was partially blinded in one eye because of a gas attack. And although small in stature, Rains served with distinction on the front lines and retired as an army captain. His voice and poise later became his trademarks in films like Casablanca and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He remains one of Hollywood's most respected character actors. Conscripted into the French army before World War I, Chevalier was wounded by shrapnel and captured early in the war, spending 2 years in a German POW camp. He used his captivity to study English, aiding his later crossover to international cinema. His release was secured through the influence of King Alfonso XIII of Spain, a fan of his partner, the singer Mistinguett, who at the time was the highest paid performer in the world. Chevalier's charm and talent made him the quintessential French entertainer in Hollywood musicals. Lee volunteered for the Royal Air Force, but was soon transferred to British intelligence due to his language skills and physical presence. He reportedly served with the Long-Range Desert Group and was involved in covert missions in Italy and North Africa. After the war, he launched a prolific film career, playing Count Dracula, Saruman, and Count Dooku, becoming one of the most recognizable figures in genre cinema. The first major Hollywood star to enlist after Pearl Harbor, Stewart flew 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, earning 2 distinguished flying crosses. He later became one of the founders of the Air Force Association and was trained to fly B-52 bombers, retiring as a brigadier general in 1967. During the Vietnam War, he flew as a non-duty observer on a B-52 mission. After the war, he starred in It's a Wonderful Life and had a legendary career with directors like Hitchcock and Capra. Often referred to as the King of Hollywood, Gable was a major star because of films like Gone with the Wind and It Happened One Night. Devastated by the death of his wife, actress Carole Lombard, who was on a war bond tour, Gable joined the Army Air Forces despite being over 40 years old. He flew bombing missions in Europe and was exposed to considerable risk. Adolf Hitler is said to have put a price on his capture. After the war, he returned to Hollywood with a rugged aura and remained a top leading man into the 1950s. Before he ever set foot on a Hollywood soundstage, David Niven had already worn the uniform of the British Army. Commissioned as a lieutenant in the Highland Light Infantry, Niven resigned his post in the early 1930s and moved to America, where he quickly rose to fame in films like The Dawn Patrol and The Prisoner of Zenda. But when war broke out in 1939, Niven was one of the very few British stars in Hollywood who returned home immediately to fight. Rejoining the army, he was assigned to the Rifle Brigade and later to a secret elite unit of British Commandos, known as Phantom, specializing in reconnaissance behind enemy lines. served with distinction in the Normandy campaign following D-Day, and later reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. Niven rarely spoke about his wartime service, but those who served with him described him as calm, brave, and always keeping morale high, even in the darkest moments. One such moment has become legendary. On the eve of a commando raid, noticing that some of his men looked anxious, Niven reportedly turned to them and quipped, "Cheer up, chaps. You only have to do this once. I have to do it all over again with Errol Flynn." After the war, Niven returned to acting and reached new heights. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor for Separate Tables in 1958 and charmed audiences in films like Around the World in 80 Days, The Pink Panther, and The Guns of Navarone. Elegant, witty, and understated, David Niven's real-life heroism matched the charm he so effortlessly brought to the screen. Before he became one of America's most respected leading men, Henry Fonda walked away from a thriving Hollywood career. Not for a role, but for duty. In 1942, at the age of 37 and already a father of 3, Fonda enlisted in the U.S. Navy, famously saying, "I don't want to be in a fake war in a studio." He served aboard the USS Curtis as a quartermaster 3rd class and later became a lieutenant junior grade, working in air combat intelligence during the Pacific Campaign. His calm under pressure and critical support in the field earned him the Bronze Star, awarded for meritorious service during active combat operations. After the war, Fonda returned to Hollywood with a quiet intensity that shaped every role he played, from The Grapes of Wrath to 12 Angry Men. In 1981, after 5 decades in film, he delivered a profoundly moving performance in On Golden Pond, acting alongside his daughter Jane Fonda. For that role, he was awarded the Academy Award for Best Actor. During World War II, Bogard served in the British Army's Intelligence Corps, eventually attaining the rank of major. In 1944, he was attached to Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's 21st Army Group as it liberated Europe and was involved in the planning of Operation Market Garden. The very Allied campaign later dramatized in A Bridge Too Far, a film in which Bogard himself would star decades later. Remarkably, he was the only cast member who had first-hand experience with the operation. Bogard also witnessed the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, an experience that haunted him for life and shaped his reserved, often intense on-screen presence. After the war, he rose to stardom in films like The Servant, Victim, and Death in Venice, earning critical acclaim for his depth and elegance. Dirk Bogard's legacy is a rare blend of wartime service and cinematic brilliance, grounded in lived experience few actors could ever claim. Both his parents being ardent Nazis, Kruger was educated at an elite Nazi school. In March 1945, at just 16 years old, Kruger was conscripted into the 38th SS Grenadier Division Nibelungen and sent into heavy combat. Ordered to fire on an approaching American squad, he refused. For this act of defiance, he was sentenced to death for cowardice, but the order was overruled by another officer. Kruger later described this as his moral break with Nazism. Reassigned as a messenger, he eventually escaped and hid in the Tyrol Mountains until the war ended. Captured by U.S. forces, he attempted to escape 3 times, succeeding on the 3rd. After the war, he became one of Germany's first post-war international stars, with major roles in The One That Got Away, The Flight of the Phoenix, A Bridge Too Far, and Barry Lyndon. Murphy's war record is the stuff of legend. He single-handedly held off a German company for an hour, then led a counterattack despite being wounded. He received 33 U.S. and foreign medals, including the Medal of Honor. Hollywood turned him into a star, and he played himself into hell and back, though he was haunted by PTSD for the rest of his life. Though she didn't serve in uniform, Lamarr co-invented a radio guidance system to combat axis jamming of torpedoes. The technology was a precursor to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. She was later recognized for her scientific contributions alongside her acting legacy. As a tail gunner in B-29 bombers flying over Japan, Bronson saw heavy action and was wounded in combat. After the war, he took advantage of the GY Bill to study art and drama. His steely demeanor made him a star in revenge thrillers and westerns, especially in Death Wish and Once Upon a Time in the West. As a Marine, Marvin saw a lot of action in the Pacific Theater. Wounded by machine gun fire during the Battle of Saipan, Marvin spent over a year recovering. His Marine experience made him an authority figure in war and action films like The Dirty Dozen and Point Blank. He remained proud of his service and often portrayed tough, complex veterans. Serving aboard the USS Proteus, Curtis saw action in the Pacific Theater. The sight of the Japanese surrender from Tokyo Bay left a lasting impression on him. After the war, he studied acting on the GI Bill and rose to fame in romantic comedies and dramas alike, including Sweet Smell of Success and Spartacus. Douglas served on a submarine chaser in the U.S. Navy and was injured in an accidental explosion on board. Known for his strong jaw and intense energy, he went on to become one of the biggest stars and influential personalities of Hollywood in the 1950s. His independent production of Spartacus broke the Hollywood blacklist. Newman served in the U.S. Navy during World War II in the Pacific Theater. Initially accepted into the Navy Forward 12 pilot program at Yale, he was disqualified due to suspected color blindness. He was reassigned as a radio man and turret gunner, training with replacement torpedo bomber units. His unit was slated to join the USS Bunker Hill, but a medical grounding spared him from a kamikaze attack that killed many of his comrades. After the war, he became one of Hollywood's most respected actors, starring in The Hustler, Cool Hand Luke, and The Verdict. Ford's patriotism led him to enlist in both the Marines and later the Navy Reserve, where he remained active for years. His soft-spoken strength made him a reliable star in dramas, westerns, and film noir. Montgomery was involved as a medic in the Dunkirk evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force and later earned distinction as a PT boat commander. He later directed and starred in the noir classic Lady in the Lake and worked as a consultant for President Eisenhower. Hedy ran guns to Yugoslav partisans and conducted reconnaissance under OSS orders. After the war, he became a rugged screen icon in the asphalt jungle and The Godfather, though he often clashed with the Hollywood studio system. As a young combat engineer, Brooks defused landmines under enemy fire. His military wit carried over into his comedies, where he often parodied fascism in films like The Producers and To Be or Not to Be. Commanding a Royal Navy landing craft, Guinness took part in the Sicily landings. He also ferried supplies and agents to the Yugoslav resistance. He later brought gravitas to roles like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Colonel Nicholson in The Bridge on the River Kwai, a film for which he received an Academy Award. Garner served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War with the 5th Regimental Combat Team. He was wounded twice, once by shrapnel and once in a friendly fire incident, and received 2 Purple Hearts. Known for his laid-back charm, Garner became a household name through roles in Maverick, The Great Escape, and The Rockford Files, and earned critical acclaim for The Notebook and Murphy's Romance. Charles Durning served in the U.S. Army during World War II, drafted at age 20. He landed in France shortly after D-Day with an artillery unit and was wounded by a German anti-personnel mine in the Normandy Bocage, requiring 6 months of recovery. He later rejoined the 398th Infantry Regiment and fought in the brutal Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. He was honorably discharged in 1946 with the rank of Private First Class. He was awarded the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts for bravery and injuries in combat. His battlefield experience deeply influenced his work as a character actor in films like Dog Day Afternoon, Tootsie, and The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Before becoming a cult film icon, Stanton served in the U.S. Navy during World War II and continued in military service during the Korean War era. Known for his quiet intensity, he starred in Paris, Texas, Repo Man, and Alien. Franz was drafted into the U.S. Army and served with the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions in Vietnam. His combat experience lent authenticity to his gritty screen presence. After returning home, he built a strong acting career, most notably as Detective Andy Sipowicz in NYPD Blue, for which he won 4 Emmy Awards. Behind the glamour of Hollywood and the spotlight of fame were men and women who once stood in uniform. Not as stars, but as soldiers, sailors, airmen, and patriots. Some fought in the trenches, others entertained the troops, and a few stood up against tyranny itself. Their stories remind us that heroism isn't found only on the silver screen, but also in the choices made when no one is watching. These were not just actors, they were warriors, and this was their greatest role of all.